On this week's edition of inCycle, the race run by the community. We're in Vårgårda in Sweden.
We have no paychecks. We are a cycling club. We're not doing this for earning money. We do it for fun.
All the twists and turns of a vintage Milan San Remo with Vincenzo Nibali.
Abbiamo preso proprio il poggio forse in seconda o terza posizione con Moric. L'obiettivo era quello di muovermi nel caso ce ne fosse stato, se si fosse mosso Kwiatkowski, Peter Sagan o altri.
And we meet the Eagle of Toledo, Federico Bahamontes. Few have soared up mountains like Federico Bahamontes. The first Spanish victor of the Tour de France, the Eagle of Toledo, was also the first to complete a career triple, king of the mountains in all three Grand Tours.
Yo diría que es más el trabajo que yo tenía en la plaza para repartir, porque después de hacer el mercado yo hacía reparto a 5 verdulerías y claro, repartir a mis clientas el género, pues había que apretar en la carretilla cuesta arriba por Toledo, no es llano ni es plano, es cuesta arriba o cuesta abajo. Y yo achaco a que yo esa fuerza, pero yo es que he entrenado muchísimo en Cerro Los Palos. Yo mis entrenos buenos eran en Cerro Los Palos, salir por la carretera de Galvez, que siempre de salida tenía 4 o 5 kilómetros de subida. Y como yo lo hacía en frío, pues yo me entrenaba así. ¿Qué es lo que tiene que hacer el inglés? Saber entrenar sobre un día a la semana, que lo practique y va mejorando. Uno, no andas contra el reloj, cuando lo practicas, mejoras como ha pasado con Contador. Contador porque ha mejorado el contrarreloj, porque se ha puesto a practicarlo.
Now aged 92, it's some 66 years since Bahamontes captured his first of 6 polka dot jerseys at the Tour. 5 years later, he'd swap it for a yellow jersey after a little helpful advice from another great of the sport, Fausto Coppi.
Que dijo que tenía que hacer la general y que me olvidase de la montaña. Que la montaña no era correcta, el que yo me dedicara solo a una cosa cuando la montaña iba a venir sola. Y así fue. Me dediqué a la general y fui a la Vuelta a Suiza, perdí 20 minutos y terminé. En la Vuelta a Suiza terminé tercero, gané la montaña y 2 etapas. Y no estaba en condiciones, estuve un mes sin montar en bicicleta y en 4 días estaba en plena forma. Salí del Tour descansado y iba por el llano mejor que cuesta arriba. Y de cuesta arriba iba bastante bien, sobre todo en mi terreno. Y así es como ocurrió y fui intentando ir a la general y me lo encontré facilísimo. Ahí es donde yo ya por la noche con la Angarica le dije, mañana vuelvo a atacar. Le dije, ¿cómo vas a volver a atacar? Que si quedan 6 días y no tenemos equipo para defender el líder. Digo, si es que los que no me aguantan son ellos. Porque yo veía que cuando yo me ponía a tirar hacían más daño que a nadie. Y ahí ese día de salida era el día de San Fermín. Ella dijo, oh, Bahamontes, aujourd'hui c'était le nombre de Fermina de la fama de Bahamontes. Hoy c'était la fête. Y me cogió la rueda y cuando me cogió la rueda dije, pues sí, empecé a beber con el bidón, me fui para atrás y me quedé el último. Para que ya no estuviera tan descaradamente detrás de mí. Y cuando me dejó, le pasé por el otro lado del pelotón, ataqué y subí solo ya y él se quedó a 100 metros y más, le fui sacando tiempo y él creía que me iba a coger bajando. Y no me cogió bajando. Y el único corredor que tiene en Brian son 2 etapas ganadas, soy yo.
As awe-inspiring as the Eagle of Toledo's performance was, so too was the list of names he overcame to reach the top of the podium.
Yo cuando vi que ganaba el Tour y empecé a creerme lo que era ganador del Tour, fue antes de llegar el Puy de Dôme. Cuando yo estaba dominando ya en la cabeza de carrera, que me ponía en cabeza con las grandes figuras, con Anquetil, con Baldini, con Rivière, con Geminiani, con Luisón Bobet, Charlie Gore, todas esas figuras, porque si tú miras bien, el Tour que más figuras ha habido fue en el 59.
Bahamontes' victory would have an even greater significance, easing the brewing political tensions between France and Francoist Spain.
Para España y para la política y para todo, porque España, cuando yo gané el Tour, las relaciones estaban rotas con Francia, Franco tampoco se le quería según qué país, el país entero cambió por completo, porque los españoles que estaban allí de cuando la guerra y estaban en Francia, pues para ellos el lunes cuando fueron a trabajar con un ganador, un español y delante de todos los franceses, pues para eso no tenía precio. El otro día me demostraron, llegaron 6 señores vestidos de negro con el lacito, como cuando lo celebraron el día 18 de julio, y un poco de sorpresa con el libro de Ginés. Y me le venían a traer, pero querían demostrar aquel 18 de julio que es inolvidable para España, y así fue. Ni el Papa, ni el caudillo, ni nadie ha reunido el público que yo he llegado a tener en Toledo en el recibimiento mío.
Vårgårda is like a small place, about 5,000 inhabitants. It's very calm and nice and easy, I would say.
Nestled in the heart of Sweden lies a community whose year revolves around one weekend. A weekend when the best female racers in the world take over town for what the locals call the bike party. This year, though, the festivities have had to be put on hold, with all hopes on a return in 2021. As inCycle found out in 2017, the town's obsession with cycling stems from success of 4 extraordinary brothers.
The Pettersson brothers, they started the cycling club in 1961, and then they have been competing for some years. They were really good in riding together. They did good results for themselves, but the team time trial was their specialty. So they had the gold medals in the World Champs, 67, 68 and 69. In the beginning of the 70s, they became professionals in Italy, all 4 brothers in the same team. They did really good results. Gösta, the oldest of them, he won the Giro d'Italia in 1971.
It would take 3 decades until the race that defines the Vårgårda weekend would first be run in 2006. Since then, it's developed into a spectacular highlight of the Women's World Tour calendar.
Crescent Vårgårda is 2 races. It's the team time trial on Friday. We start here in Vårgårda and going out for 42.5 kilometer long race. And it's some fast parts, quick parts, and there's also some tricky parts. And the end of the team time trial is the same course as we do in the road race. That will be on Sunday. So there will be 143 kilometers.
As opposed to stage races, where a total accumulated time determines the winner, the 2 races are separate one-day events. The road race has proven somewhat of a trendsetter, boasting 5 gravel sections that have since been copied by numerous races elsewhere. But in the view of those behind the race, there's something else that makes the event so special.
The unique thing with our races is that we have no men's race. That's one. I know there are other races also, but I just spoke to one of the team managers and he said, we really appreciate, we are the stars. You do everything for us. In other places, it's a men's race that's in front and we come after in one or another way.
With its atmosphere beside the roads and the army of volunteers that make the weekend happen, it's a community dedicated to the sport and their race. Despite this year's cancellation of the bike party, its importance to the people of Vårgårda all but guarantees its return in the future.
We arranged the race with about 400 volunteers, and I would say we have no paychecks. We are a cycling club. We're not doing this for earning money. We do it for fun and for giving something to women's cycling.
There are a few more important voices in grassroots women's cycling right now than Dame Sarah Storey. The 42-year-old's dual sporting career is the stuff of legend. But as she gears up for a staggering 7th Paralympic Games in Tokyo next year, Storey continues to play a major role in shaping the future of Britain's young riders. While best known for her exploits on the track, the Mancunian has had a long career on the road, and now much of her attention is devoted to helping junior talent through her Storey racing squad, as inCycle found out when we met up with the team last summer.
Storey Racing has been going now for around about 6 years, but in the current format for 3 years. We started by setting up a team at the end of 2013, and we wanted to give me a platform to race after the Games in London. I'd won 4 gold medals there, and we needed a little bit more control over my race programme than I had had. So we set up the team and we brought together a group of very talented women, and that's where we sort of set the ball rolling, and each year we've had a new set or added to, and people have moved on, and yeah, I can't remember how many riders we've worked with over the last 6 years, but it's probably getting close to 60 or 70 riders.
With the help of her husband Barney, Storey manages a team primarily racing at the top level in the UK. It comes after several years yo-yoing between domestic and international tiers.
Storey Racing has evolved and ebbed and flowed across the last few years, and we've had 2 seasons where we were a UCI team. One of those seasons was last year, and one of the challenges as a team, a small team anyway, is the value for money of paying that registration to be a UCI team, only to find out you can't get into any of the races. And because the coverage of those races is very much focused around a highlights package, if you're not in the front of the race, you're not getting on the television either. So value for money is very, very poor. So we decided to take a step back from being a UCI team, and we decided to open our doors to junior riders, something we hadn't done before. For women, there's no under 23 category internationally like there is for the men, so it is a really big jump up for some of the juniors to go from, you know, junior races of maybe 60 to 80 kilometres into that senior peloton, where now we're seeing stages and races of at least 140, and in the recent women's tour, 160.
Britain's most successful Paralympian, Storey is an exemplary sporting role model. Her first 5 Paralympic gold medals came in swimming, before turning her attention to cycling in 2005. Her aerobic abilities have since helped her to a further 9 golds on the track. As probably the most recognisable figure at British National Series races, unsurprisingly, those up-and-coming riders know who to go to for tips.
For me as a senior rider, I sometimes find myself helping people in the peloton, especially if it seems obvious that they're not technically aware of something that would make their race easier. That can happen quite often in a breakaway. Riders who've only ever raced on the left-hand side of the road, some of them will really struggle when the roads are completely closed and they can use both sides. They'll stay on the left-hand side. Junior riders need to understand tactics. They need to understand the different ways of communicating in a bunch. We don't have race radios at this level, so it's a really valuable learning curve, and I think mixing senior riders with those junior riders, it just brings them on in a different way.
As Storey continues to prepare for further medal challenges at Tokyo in 2021, she's as determined to see greater investment in women's cycling. From her experience as a team manager fighting to attract sponsorship, there's a couple of areas in particular she would like to see change.
Television coverage in women's cycling is a big issue. When we turn on, TV channels, we can see any number of men's races, reruns of men's races, and it's the finance for the organiser of putting on those races in the first place. I think maybe the UCI have to delve into their very deep pockets and look to maybe support and bolster the financial package a race has in order to allow them to be able to broadcast. And until people are on television live, it's very difficult for a sponsor to kind of really garnish their return on investment. And obviously in the UK, we don't have a huge amount on television live. So when we do, we try and be there. And that again is down to finance, but we're a free to view event, and it's not like a football match, a rugby match, cricket match. There's no ticket on the door to come and watch these races. You can stand roadside and see the best athletes in the world flash past, and it's not cost you a penny. So I think perhaps that's one of the unique selling points that we need to perhaps push a little bit more.
While there's much Storey would like to see improved, she's also keen to emphasise the positive points she finds from racing at domestic level. While it still gives her the hard kilometres needed to prepare for Tokyo, it's the hard work of so many others around her that continues to provide this sporting legend inspiration.
Although there are a lot of things that are really challenging about racing at this level, it's really a very positive place to be. I think it's very easy to get bogged down by the financials of a situation, of the fact that it is run by volunteers, but then isn't all sport a little bit like that at national level? You're striving to kind of make it, whatever that means. So yeah, we can talk all day about what we'd like to see from a financial and commercial perspective, but actually what we've got is something that gives athletes that ground to be nurtured and to really move on and up in the world.
The 2018 Milan San Remo ranks as a modern classic, an Italian home favourite riding to a spectacular solo victory after attacking on the slopes of the Poggio. Having gone under the radar during the early part of that season, it was a win that few were expecting, not least the Shark of Messina himself, Vincenzo Nibali.
Non avevo, diciamo, nella testa il mirino di fare risultato assoluto alla Milano San Remo, perché avevo un compito molto importante, quello di guidare anche Sonny Colbrelli per lo sprint finale in cui ce ne fosse stato bisogno, da stopper sulla salita come Poggio e Cipressa. E però effettivamente sentivo che stavo molto meglio, incominciavo a pedalare molto bene. La Milano San Remo l'anno scorso è venuta veramente molto dura, perché nella prima parte della corsa ha piovuto, era tanto freddo.
As well as the weather, Nibali would have to defy the odds in a race where opportunists rarely make it to the line alone and the sprinters dominate.
Sulla Cipressa abbiamo cercato di fare un gruppo molto unito e di andare a prendere anche l'alta salita tutti quanti insieme, perché il gruppo comunque è molto più forte, specialmente in quel tratto di pianura dove c'era anche tanto vento in faccia. Il Poggio, essendo una salita molto vicina all'arrivo, bisogna stare molto attenti, e quindi la funzione da stopper in questo caso avrebbe avuto molto più senso. E io ero un po' il jolly anche della squadra.
Look at that, barging for position between Conor Valovas and Vincenzo Nibali, and it's Nibali who gets what he wants, and they move ever closer to the front now. It's Sonny Colbrelli being pushed into position now, the fast finishing Italian from Bari Merida.
Abbiamo preso proprio il Poggio forse in seconda o terza posizione con Moric, e il mio obiettivo era quello di muovermi nel caso ce ne fosse stato, se si fosse mosso Kwiatkowski, Peter Sagan o altri.
Watch Nibali, he gets past Jumpy Drucker, latches onto Nylands, and Nibali is on the offensive now, and the volume here alongside us goes up a little bit.
Nel momento che c'è stato questo attacco io mi sono subito mosso. E l'azione mia era molto buona, sentivo che spingevo molto bene e non mi sono preoccupato se magari la mia azione si fosse spenta a pochi chilometri dall'arrivo, perché sapevo che comunque Sonny Colbrelli con i miei compagni era in una posizione di rincalzo, era coperto, quindi stavo facendo una bellissima azione e dentro la mia testa paradossalmente ero tranquillo. L'attacco del Poggio, la parte iniziale è stato un ritmo altissimo, e anche il forte rilancio dopo ogni tornante fa questo rendere un pochino più di fatica anche sulle gambe. Dopo 300 km, una giornata molto pesante, quella che avevamo affrontato, giustamente il peso è sentito. Inizialmente ero un po' scettico sul dare qualche cambio perché non sapevo neanche io cosa fare. Nella seconda fase del poggio, quasi agli ultimi 2 chilometri, quando la pendenza risale di nuovo, si era creato un bel vantaggio di circa 10-12 secondi e quindi in quel momento ho continuato a guadagnare.
Milan Kwiatkowski now looks at Sagan, asks the question, are we letting this one go?
Mi sono detto ora o mai più e quindi ho provato a fare l'assolo e è venuto veramente una cosa spettacolare.
Here he is, Vincenzo Nibali on the attack, on the Poggio, and he is a nightmare for the rest of the race. Vincenzo Nibali over the top of the Poggio. What sort of an advantage will the Italian take on the rest of the race? Is it big enough to hold on to it on the descent and then onto the flat 2 kilometres to the finish line?
Big left-hander coming up, and then we go into a 180-degree right-hand hairpin just down here. Of all the riders who can descend on their own, this is the man who can do it.
Ho cercato di essere molto lucido e di non spingere veramente a tutto in discesa perché sapevo che la parte più importante era poi il tratto in pianura. Il tratto dalla fine del poggio andare all'arrivo è veramente breve, ma la strada sale leggermente un poco sul viale di via Roma e quindi sembra che non arrivi quasi mai all'arrivo. L'azione che ho fatto lì, anche di tenere duro dopo, è stato molto più importante della discesa.
Vincenzo Nibali takes his first ever victory in Milan San Remo.
The draw of La Classicissima remains a strong one for the Trek Segafredo rider, and he's expected to be on the start line once again for the 111th Milano San Remo on the 8th of August. That's all this time. Until next week, keep up to date with us on social media.